The video game Remnant 2 is a continuation of the original game with the same name, which takes place a few of decades into the future and continues the story of the residents of Ward 13. Despite the fact that the gate that directly links to Earth was destroyed in the last game, this simply provided the survivors with additional time to prepare for the impending invasion of the Root, while they tenaciously searched for a method to return to their home planet. A concise synopsis of the events that took place in Remnant 2. After a number of decades have passed since the events of Remnant, the story begins after the events of From the Ashes and follows one of two outsiders trying to make it through the hard plains of Earth, which have been invaded by whatever is left of the invasion by the Root. Clementine, one of the dreamers who survived and returned to Earth to protect it, and her companion Beau, came to the group's aid after they were involved in a potentially fatal encounter with the Root creatures when they were looking for the fabled Ward 13. After that, the strangers are brought into Ward 13, which is home to humanity's last remaining civilization. Here, the protagonists interact with a wide variety of non-playable characters or NPCs, including founder Ford, who has aged since giving up his immortality earlier in the game. Then, he guides the protagonists into the bowels of Ward 13, which is where a piece of the World Stone is resting in a dormant state. Ford was teleported to a realm that he was not familiar with after reawakening the stone. Clementine witnesses this and moves closer to the World Stone, but rather than just being taken somewhere else, she is abducted by an entity that resides within the stone. In order to save her, the protagonist must likewise touch the stone, which then causes him to be taken to a different location. The protagonist then travels across a number of different planets, the majority of which are either ruled by the Root or experiencing some kind of upheaval. They eventually make it to the Labyrinth, which is a dimension that connects to all of the other universes that are possible. They find Clementine here, who has established communication with the Keeper, who is the protector of the Labyrinth. Here, they are reunited with her. The Keeper, who is in need of assistance in preventing the Root from taking over all of reality, enlists the help of the protagonist to search for the fragments of the Index, a powerful key that enables the holder to open a way directly to whatever world they wish to visit. The Keeper's goal is to prevent the Root from completing his conquest of all of reality. Once the Keeper has collected all the fragments of the Index, he will use it to open a portal that will take him straight to the location where the Root originated. The main character, who has been fighting against the Annihilation, which is essentially the Root hive mind embodied up to this point, takes their last stand at this point. During the conflict, the Annihilation are already demonstrating symptoms that they are becoming more powerful. For example, they are now able to warp reality, which brings the conflict into multiple dimensions at once, with one of these realities appearing to be in a simulated reality. After it appears that you have defeated Annihilation, it immediately begins to regenerate for the next round. Clementine and the Keeper are finally caught up with the main character, and both of them are in a state of bewilderment over the fact that Annihilation cannot be destroyed. The only thing that is left to happen is for the Root to immediately consume all that is known to exist, or they could choose to start over with a blank slate and reset everything, which would get rid of the corruption caused by the Root. Clementine has an idea for an additional potential solution, but rather than elaborate on it, she takes the Index from the Keeper's hand and uses it on herself instead. Because of this, everyone and everything around Clementine begins to transform into something that resembles data or energy, which then begins to collect inside of her body. When all else has been eaten, the only thing that is left is the Index floating alone in the depths of the infinite nothingness as the credits roll. The Index remains in the frame throughout the entirety of the credits sequence, right up until its conclusion. It is subsequently disclosed that the Keeper was not absorbed by the Index, and is showing moving closer to the item. At precisely the same moment as the Keeper turns its back, the Index flickers back and spews reality back into existence. In the climactic moment, the main character is shown awakening in the middle of a grassy field. But what exactly occurred with Clementine? Clementine's choice seems to be a reset, and it might appear confusing at first, especially considering that she appeared to be opposed to the idea while the Keeper was discussing their only two possible endings. However, her activity could be seen as her own method of becoming a bookmark within the Book of Reality, such that what occurred wasn't a complete reset of the system. This interpretation is possible because of the way that she acted. This event is basically what is known as a reroll of the game, which is similar to a New Game Plus, but instead, players get the opportunity to revisit the reality in a different way than they did previously, Because of the plot order, adversaries and missions will be changed from the previous version of the game. The sole distinction is that the player's progress will remain unchanged throughout time. As for why Clementine thought this would work and why she opted to do so, we can just chalk it up to hopefulness for the time being, unless a DLC for the game comes out and delivers some kind of other conclusion. In that game, we will have to consider it a new reason. It is reasonable to assume that Clementine is keeping her fingers crossed that they may only one day discover an alternate approach that will allow them to achieve a different end. In addition to this, it is a fun way to demonstrate to players within the game itself that the game is iterative and that they can continue to play even if they do not select a new character. But have all of the root symptoms been eradicated? It would appear not, given that the players are simply transported to a time or reality in which the root has already wreaked havoc on Earth and conquered a great number of other worlds. This is the reason why players can continue to play the game even after completing the game's primary campaign. The re-roll simply resets the clock, which means that the root is still around after all. The only event that has even a remote chance of permanently removing the root is a complete reset. And even then, it is unclear whether or not the Keeper's predictions would be accurate under those circumstances. And finally, I was wondering whether there would be another sequel. We could just accept a pessimistic view of a never-ending cycle struggle against the root, which would mean that this game in the Remnant franchise would be its final installment, regardless of whether or not another Remnant sequel or downloadable content is developed in the future. If there were ever to be another game that was connected to the continuity, its primary objective might be to locate a solution to terminate the endless cycle of events and perhaps discover a definitive conclusion to the tale. And that is the story of Remnant 2. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.